All right, and welcome back to video number 8 in our series of how to go from zero to hero in Cadence development. I actually love that little phrase I do at the beginning. Tuning in from my dark and depressing room, please ignore that. I like coding in the dark. I don't know why, but anyway, I'm here for another tutorial. Let's get right into it. And in this video, we're gonna go over references. So this is gonna be a super short video. Sorry for my previous videos being really long. But let's do it. So usually, if you have knowledge of previous programming languages, you know that references are basically a way to represent something you have, and it's when you modify that reference, you're modifying the original thing, right? And so in Cadence, when if you have a resource, for example, references are most often used with resources. If you have a resource, remember in the previous video you said, we were saying that we have to move it around, and there's a bunch of annoying things you have to do with resources because they're so secure. Well, in this video, we're going to go over how we can do a lot of that annoying stuff, but using references so that you don't actually have to move the resource itself. All right, so I've defined a simple contract called resource stuff, and inside this contract, we've defined a resource named pet. This pet has one thing in it called name, the name of the pet, and we initialize that pet name inside our init function. And other than that, we have a function called createPet that takes in a name for the pet and returns a new pet resource. So if you don't understand this syntax, please go back to the last video. It will make much more sense if you watch that. So we will deploy this contract. You can see it's deployed, and we'll go into a transaction and start doing stuff with references, right? So first of all, let's actually just let's get our pet. This is going to be of type resource stuff dot pet, but remember it's a resource, so we put this here, and we're going to move a new resource, and so we're going to do that by calling resource stuff dot create pet, and we're going to pass it a name that's going to be I don't know, Bob. This is the name of our pet. Wow, that's a really sad name. Oh, I spelled this wrong. That's why. Okay. So we're going to create our pet, and it says loss of resource, so just to get rid of that error, let's all the way down here just destroy our pet after the transaction is over. Alright. So again, if none of this makes sense to you, please go watch the previous video on resources. Okay. So what we would usually have to do, let's say we wanted to let's say we wanted to have a function called public function change pet name. And this would, let's say we wanted this to take in a pet, which is a pet resource. We would have to do all this fancy stuff, so we would have to say pet.name equals, we would change the pet's name to Alice or something, and then we would return the pet back to, whoever called this function. So in essence, the pain here, this is just to show what the pain of this would be, is that, in this case scenario, what's happening is we would have to pass our, pet in. We'd have to change the name and then return it back. And so there's a lot of moving going on. And so instead of doing that, let's actually take in a reference. And so if we take in a reference to a pet, we're not actually moving any resources around. So we can simply just change the name. Now it's giving us an error. I'm going to change this. Please ignore that. I'm going to explain why it's giving that error in a video. But just understand the concept that we don't have to do all of that moving anymore, So that's kind of the idea here, okay? So let's deploy this contract. So it's deployed, and back in our transaction, we can actually, we can actually call that function. So resource stuff dot change pet name. And let's actually refresh this because it's the flow playground's a bit buggy. So dot change pet name. And what we're gonna do is, instead of having to like I said, move the pet in and all that stuff, we're just going to pass in a reference to pet. And so it's expecting a cast expression, so we actually have to do is say a var pet reference. This is going to be a reference, and so references in Cadence are use this and symbol. This is at, and this is the and symbol, so this is a reference, and this is going to be a resource stuff dot pet, and this is going to equal a reference to pet, but it expects a casting expression, which means you have to say as a reference to resource stuff dot pet. So it's a little redundant, and here we can just pass in pet ref. It's a little redundant in the sense that when you're making a reference to a resource, you have to, pretty much say that it's a reference. Like you have to say, we're borrowing or we're basically getting a reference to that resource as, this type. And so this isn't like really actually required here. The only part that's required is you have to say we're getting a reference to this resource as a reference to a resource stuff.pet type. But I just put this here because I think it's helpful to kind of see it. And then we're going to pass in that reference here. And so let's actually, after this, or actually before we do this, let's log the pet.name. And then after the function call, we will log the pet.name. And we will see that the pet's name gets changed from Bob to Alice. So let's run this, Bob to Alice. So this is resources in Cadence. Wanted to keep this a short video. And thanks so much for tuning in. All right.